Behold the might of an angel. This thing here is the Featherbow. What does it do? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Let's talk about it. All right, so health. First of all, this is an offensive Featherbow. This is one of the Featherbows you get from the main quest lines, from doing missions and stuff. And she comes default offensive, which is ideal if you're trying to deal damage. If you want to use this as utility, you can always change its attributes, but offensive in PvE is pretty good, probably generally the best thing for most classes except for utility classes. But the health is definitely above, or not above average, it's like low average, so it's not even like average health. I would say it's like on the lower average. It's not low health, it's not average health, it's like low average. Physical attack is average, magical attack is a little bit below average. Physical defense is low, magical defense is okay. Accuracy is good, evasion is good. Crits is low, guard rate is low, and initiative is above average. So those are your basic stats at level 31 at least. Let's go over what this thing does. So it is a ranged flyer. So it has essentially two things if it's the party leader. It has 4 stamina like all flyers, 150 mobility, can provide range assists, and it also ignores terrain and trap types, trap effects, and moving. So it's kind of interesting that it can do that, but just like with all the other flyers, 2 times dodge rates versus grounded melee, 2 times bow damage for attacks versus flying. I don't know what that 37 means, that's weird. Versus 37 flying. I'm guessing that's supposed to be something else. I don't know why it says 37 there, but all right, so bow, flying, archer, angel. So it also has flying weakness, which is very funny. Can lower enemy accuracy, grows stronger in daytime battles. Doesn't get a stat increase like the furries do during the day, but it has increased like abilities. Certain skills have like gain a passive point, stuff like this during the day. All right, the skills. Delaying shot. Attack a single enemy for 25 potency, but it hits 4 times. So that's 4 potential chances to roll for crits, or if you want to stack a conferral, that should boost damage on this by a bit. Inflicts initiative -20. This is decent for slowing something down. The damage is fine. I mean, it's not gonna kill things typically, but it's okay. Saint shots, 80% or 80 potency, 100 hit rate. Attack a single enemy, inflicts passive point -1, additional passive point -1 to grounded. This is just like another utility thing. Probably don't want to optimize for this, but it could be useful in like a boss fight or something against a grounded boss. But there's not really too many difficult bosses. It's alright. Photon arrow, this is probably their best move. Attack 2 enemies, inflicts physical defense -50%, inflicts passive seal during the day. So here is, of the 3 attacks, only one of them really gets boosted in the day, and passive seal prevents things from using passives, which is actually pretty useful. So it's kind of like a mixture of damage and shutdown as well as a debuff. This is definitely their best thing in terms of offense, and this is what you should be prioritizing. Now, delaying shot can be decent for utility, maybe for PvP, but for PvE, this is definitely the thing. Aerial pursuits, this is also decent. Attack activates after a flying ally attacks. A flying ally. So griffins, wyverns, angels, stuff like this. Follow-up attack a single enemy. And also look at the damage though. 100 potency is not bad. Now if they had more strength and they had more damage, this would be a crazy follow-up. But because their strength is kind of low, 100 potency really just hits like okay damage. It's nothing too crazy. It's neat though, it's decent. Tailwind activates after using an active skill, grants a row of allies plus 10 initiative. Effect is doubled for flying targets. So this is good for accelerating other flyers. If you wanted to run like a griffin squad, I could see this being better, because then you basically have the angel plume effect. So you also get 20 initiative. So if this unit is fast and they do like a delaying shot on an enemy fast unit, or if they do like a photon arrow to debuff 2 targets in like a row that you're going to target with your griffins, for example, then you could tailwind your griffins, which griffins are typically slow, so giving them plus 20 initiative is pretty big and does matter. So this could be used to speed boost like griffin row attacks and stuff like this. So it does have combo potential. It's not as universal as like Elven Archer, who can just give anything plus 50 magic potency on all of their attacks for the rest of the battle, assuming the buff doesn't get removed. But it still is worth calling out, especially if you want to run flyer squads. And then we have Shining Light. This is probably their best ability, honestly. Like, they don't have damage, they have some support and some utility, but this is for sure one of their best things. Activates before an enemy uses an active skill, inflicts blindness on a row of enemies. True hit. This is definitely their best skill. When they use it against you, in order for you to counter them, you just run anti-blind. In PvE, enemies don't have anti-blind. So if an enemy is faster than you, doesn't matter who it is, you get to blind their whole row, including the attacking enemy. So very useful. You can also use this twice if you have 4 passive points. And then of course their Valor skill, Delay, increase the wait time of an enemy by 5 seconds. This forces an enemy into waiting. And you also gain first strike against waiting enemies. So in a way, it does 2 things. It shuts an enemy unit down, like an enemy squad, and you also get first strike. And it is ineffective versus garrisoned, so unfortunately you can't use it on bosses. So it's something you probably shouldn't use, honestly. There's better things. Provoke, for example, is just significantly better, especially when it provokes multiple things. And there's other things. I would not use your Valor points on this. All right, so for the build, for fun, we're just running like a pursuit build. So, all right, so these are physical attackers. So any bow that's physical primarily is going to be best. And Frost Bloom Bow, this is Unifi's bow, and typically she's gonna want this, but you can take it from her if you don't plan on using her. Crit rate plus 15%, evasion plus 20, base physical attack of 21. You can of course forge it to be 25. Earrings of Pursuit, so that way your aerial pursuit is 140 potency, and you also have like some crits. And then Sapphire Pendant, just so you can spam aerial pursuits. So in this case, we'd probably do something like this. We want to just go for this, comboing off of things. And then Lucky Coin for crits. You could do other things too for damage increase, but this also gives evasion. So we have 100 evasion, which is pretty decent. We have 50% crit rate, so half of the shots will crit. And then you can Photon Arrow once for decent damage, inflict defense, minus 50%, and then passive shield during the day. So this is just an example build. You could also just go for something like Shining Light and like just drop this aspect. And then you have like utility, like whatever bow and accessories you want, like something like this, so you can Shining Light twice. This is more of like a defensive thing, where it's reacting to enemies attacking you. So if you don't have board stun, board freeze, row stun, row freeze, board nuke, things that typically just shut down enemies before they can even do anything, this can be a decent option. It's cheap. You just throw one of these in a team, or 2 of these in a team, and they just keep blinding enemies, and then the enemies just start missing attacks. Now, certain things can remove the blindness, but because this is a trigger based off of an active skill, most things can't cleanse it right away, so it does usually take effect. Now, there are instances where things can be cleansed, especially like a row cleanse or something, so it's not 100% effective, but because it activates off of an enemy attack, it tends to at least blind the attacker. There are some enemies that, like, after the first dude is blinded, they'll like row cleanse as their active ability, for example. So you have to be mindful of those. But it's a decent utility class, definitely better than Feathersword. Feathersword just seriously lacks damage and offense. It doesn't really have utility either. So it's kind of like this weird class that just needs like bigger debuffs. Like if Shield Smite hit like 2 enemies or whatever, like a row or a column. If this was like a row attack and this was a column attack, I think this class would be very good. And honestly, it would be fine. It wouldn't even be overpowered if this was a row attack for late game, because look at how crazy Berengaria's kit is. And other units like Berengaria, like the Elven Sisters and stuff like this. But decent class, decent utility, okay chip damage. It's pretty hard to hit. Its survivability is not the best against certain things, but generally it shouldn't be getting killed. So it has some potential. Probably better in PvP though, but that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.